The key ideas or concepts for this presentation are naked eye, sky cycles, diurnal cycles, lunar cycles, and annual cycles. Naked eye observations, measuring the sky with only your bare or unaided eyeballs. Welcome to Astronomy. Astronomy is about discovering Earth's place in the universe. How did you first observe the sky? We like to think that we look at the sky using telescopes and binoculars, but really we first looked at the sky with our eyes. We all naturally enjoy observing our world using our five senses. In astronomy, we only use our sight or light, because there really isn't a way that you can go and sniff the moon from Earth. So what are some of the things that you can see with your own naked eyes? The sun should be obvious, but be careful. Direct sunlight can damage your eyes or your cell phone camera, and the sun is why we can't see most objects in the sky during the daytime, because the sun is brighter than everything else. The moon is the second brightest object in our sky, followed by the planets. If you live in the city, most of the time those bright stars you see are planets rather than stars. Sky cycles, repeating patterns we see in the sky. When you look at the sky with your naked eye, sky cycles are those observations that happen over and over. They are repeating around the same time each day, month, or year. These repeating patterns are caused because we live on Earth and our perspective of the universe is limited by what we can see while living on our tiny mud and rock ball. The entire sky appears to be moving around us. It is this motion that made early civilizations incorrectly believe that we must be the center of everything. That is why this video is upside down. We have to understand the perspective of living on Earth. Perspective matters in space, and I like the analogy of a dog riding in a car. The dog sees the entire universe as going past them, and from the perspective of the dog, maybe they are the most important thing. But if the dog was able to make observations using mathematics, the dog would discover that she is only moving relative to the world outside of the car, so maybe they are not the center of the universe. Maybe it lies elsewhere outside of the car. There are three types of sky cycles, overall patterns that are caused by our perspective from Earth. Diurnal patterns, this is the science word for daily cycles that are caused by the Earth rotating on its axis. Lunar or monthly patterns of the moon as the moon goes around the Earth, and then the Earth and moon go around the sun. And annual or yearly patterns caused by the Earth going around the sun. It is these patterns that help us figure out the true movement of the sky above us, developing models that will eventually reveal the science of astronomy. But these are patterns that you notice without science being involved. Diurnal cycles, daily patterns, patterns caused by the rotation of the Earth. Diurnal and nocturnal are both the scientific adjectives or describing happening in a period of time. They are opposites of each other. Diurnal describes things happening in the daytime, and then nocturnal describes things happening at night. We don't use nocturnal to describe our basic understanding of the patterns, because we are asleep at night, and it's only during the daytime that we tend to make observations about the world around us, and then we've extrapolated that to observing things at night, so we observe it as happening once per day rather than once per night. Stop and think, how many of your own cycles are diurnal? We are a diurnal species, and we tend to do everything during the day, so a lot of our terminology revolves around daytime or daylight. It is not surprising that these civilizations like the Egyptians worship the sun as a god. That's why the word nocturnal doesn't really describe us. We are a diurnal species, a diurnal creature living on Earth. Even the nighttime sky cycles of our ancestors observed were first thought to come from the sun, which makes perfect sense because you can't see these cycles when the sun is out. The stars are still there, but that big ball of flaming plasma, the sun, keeps us from seeing them. The nighttime sky appears to have its own diurnal cycle, happening every day, because the stars appear to be roughly in the same location every night, but they do change over longer periods than one 24-hour day. Over months, the stars in the sky slowly change because we are in a different position around the sun in our orbit. That slow change to the stars in the sky gives us a clue to the true motion of the universe, and is why our ancestors started grouping them together into constellations to tell stories about them. Most early astronomy is about the nature of where the sun is. Is it going around us, or are we going around it? And the pattern of why we know the sun is at the center of the solar system is one of the objectives for this unit. Lunar cycles, monthly patterns. Monthly patterns based on the phases of the moon. The moon is so bright that it is one of the few objects you can see in the sky in major cities. Luna is the Latin word for moon. The moon is so visible that we can make up stories because we can see the patterns on the face of the moon. Until the Apollo missions in the 1960s, we didn't know what caused these patterns, so until Apollo, we made up shapes about the surface features of the moon. My favorite is the dancing bunny rabbit. Once you see it, it's kind of hard to go back. Most people see a face on the moon. It's actually lava fields, but didn't stop people from, before Apollo, making up fantastic stories with little knower science behind them. And the Egyptians are back because the moon was a god to them, which is a good thing because we did need written observations about the sky to eventually do some science later on, so that we could recognize what these patterns really meant, and their perspective matters in space. So the moon looks entirely different if you turn it 180 degrees and look at it from the other direction, but it is still the same object. The moon's phases hold the key to our understanding of this larger pattern. They repeat over and over, and every civilization on Earth began understanding these patterns and writing things down, because the moon's patterns are an easy way of telling time longer than a day. The lunar phases almost fit into a standard month of our current calendar. That's why the word moon and month sound so similar. They both have the same root words. And nearly every civilization on Earth has made calendars from the phases of the moon, and many religious lunisolar calendars still do so today. The moon helps us count periods of time of about a month. Now that's important because you need to know when winter is coming, because winter's a time of hardship and you might not live through it. And if winter is coming, that is an example of an annual cycle or yearly patterns caused by the Earth orbiting the sun. The changing of the seasons is probably the first observation of an annual cycle that you ever noticed. Seasons are a pattern of the amount of precipitation or rain that we get and the average temperature. Places further away from the equator get more snow, while places near the equator will experience seasons with more rain, which is a larger pattern affecting all of Earth. The power of the sun was easily seen by historical astronomers. Even without any special equipment, we can observe that there's something larger than ourselves going on, and the annual cycle of the seasons coincides with other motions of the sun in the sky. Historically, the argument was about position and the direct cause of the seasons. Is it the sun moving or is it the Earth moving? Again, all about that is about this unit's objective of discovering the science of astronomy and which object is actually at the center of our relationship. Is it going to be the Earth or is it going to be the sun? And before we get into any of that, I do want to address a misconception right now. Seasons are not caused by distance from the sun. In January, when it is wintertime in the northern hemisphere, we're actually slightly closer. So distance has nothing to do with seasons on Earth. And seasons, that's kind of why this figure 8 appears on some classroom globes. That's tracking the sun's position in the sky at noon on specific days during the calendar year. The sun changes its position in the sky throughout the year, coming back to its original position in time, an annual cycle. And the further you are away from the equator of Earth, the more pronounced or extreme this movement's going to be. And we'll talk about next time how we track these movements with stone, building stone monuments to the patterns that we see in the sun, an annual cycle. So there's another cycle that we all really like, and that's your birthday. It's an annual pattern, but it's more of a celebration that you survived winter. Good for you. You made it through the winter time, and you completed an arbitrary lap around the sun. Go you. Making it around the sun.